This video is sponsored by Recon, more on them later. Few things make my day more than a bad prediction. I feel like I'm not alone with that, since there's plenty of videos online of people looking back on their predictions and feeling the deep shame at not having flawless clairvoyance. However, as much as I love an awful prediction, I can also appreciate a prediction so eerily correct that it sends a chill down my spine. Those rare moments in video games where the writers have got a detail or two pretty much spot on, like they've got special access to information that we don't have and can conjure up scenarios that we're due to see in reality at some point. Games that predicted real-world events are so interesting to look at, and honestly, I adore thinking about them. And if there's one thing I love more than predictions, it's high-quality audio, and thankfully this video is sponsored by Recon. Longtime fans of the show will know that I've been partnered with Recon for more than 5 years now, and let me just say, they are still my absolute go-to for earbuds, whether I'm editing videos or just relaxing with some music. These everyday earbuds pack in some amazing features. First off, they have a 32-hour battery life, and with the quick charge function, just 10 minutes of charging gives you 90 minutes of playtime. Plus, they have active noise cancellation, which is a game changer for me when I'm on long flights or just need to focus at the gym. They're also super comfortable. They come with different gel tip sizes so they fit snugly without slipping, and they're even water and sweat resistant. Whether I'm out for a run or just caught in the rain, these earbuds are built to handle it. And right now is the perfect time to snag a pair. Recon is offering up to 30% off site-wide for Black Friday at buyraycon.com/rabbid. So if you want premium sound without the premium price tag, this is the deal to grab. Honestly, I've tried other earbuds, but Recon's everyday earbuds are still my daily must-have. And if you're somehow not completely in love with them, there's a 30-day happiness guarantee, so there's really nothing to lose here. Check out the link in the description, go to buyraycon.com/rabbid for up to 30% off site-wide, and trust me, you'll want to get in on this deal. Thank you again to Recon for sponsoring this video. Anyway, a little slice of reality for you. If this video gets too real at points, I'm honestly not too sure what I can do about that. It's quite hard to talk about things that video games have predicted about real life without discussing all the weird eccentricities of life that somehow resemble video games. I'll try to keep it as neutral as I can, but that might be difficult since the first game up is Watch Dogs Legion, which is part of a franchise that has morphed into something completely different over the years. It started out as little more than Grand Theft Auto with hacking, but it's since expanded into a full-blown dystopian exploration of corporate control, surveillance, and oppressive artificial intelligence. If this is starting to sound like real life, then hey, you're getting the point of this video. What I want to focus on is hacktivism, which is a big part of how Watch Dogs in general justifies all of its hacking as being on the side of good. That's kind of where the similarities to GTA ends, because while the hacking is definitely a crime, it's framed as a necessary evil to help combat a much greater threat. Now, it's important to know that Watch Dogs didn't invent using hacking to take down corrupt corporations, since its origins can be traced back to the mid-1990s, and found popularity thanks to the actions of groups like WikiLeaks and Anonymous, and even fictionally, we've had shows like Mr. Robot that have definitely shown the merits of using technology for activism. What Watch Dogs Legion showed specifically was a future where hacktivism is readily available to the individual masses instead of organised groups. You don't have to be signed up to one of these infamous collectives to have an impact on society. Even if it hasn't been as blatant as hacktivism, the use of technology for public movements like Black Lives Matter and the anti-surveillance protests in Hong Kong from the last few years have demonstrated how the future that Legion predicted would come to light. And it's hardly like this will slow down in the future. We're getting new tools every day, and with AI surging in popularity, you'd better believe that more and more will become available to the budding hacktivist. It's a good time to get on the right side of history. Do you remember when World of Warcraft had that weird corrupted blood plague thing? If you're not familiar, let me give you a quick catch up. There was this boss that inflicted a debuff called Corrupted Blood that would whittle away at your health before eventually killing you. It would spread among your party members like a virus, so it could be quite devastating. However, it was confined to the room in which you fought this boss, so there was no chance it would spread outside of this one area. However, again, your animal companions could contract the debuff, and if you deactivated them while they had the debuff only to reactivate them outside of the fight, your animal companion would be running around with this highly contagious debuff virus that spread very quickly, killing every player around and requiring a hard reset from Blizzard to stop. If this sounds like a certain pandemic that we all have harrowing memories of, then you're wrong, since COVID-19 didn't transmit via animals and wasn't a blood plague and wasn't triggered by Hakkar the Soul Flayer. So I guess we have to look elsewhere to see if any games predicted some kind of global pandemic. I bet there's not like loads of those or anything. Yeah, so The Division predicted the outbreak of some kind of viral infection. It's actually weird to come back to this game now we're on the other side of a real-life global pandemic, because The Division came out in 2016, which admittedly was a terrible year for other reasons, but it was a year that was blissfully unaware of the chaos that was to befall the public just 4 years later. The Division unleashed its virus through the dollar flu, or green poison, which is basically a variation of smallpox that contaminated US dollar bills that spread through New York City like wildfire, and what followed was a state of emergency, widespread panic, and a general shutdown of all essential services. These themes would be very familiar when COVID-19 swept across the world in 2020 and brought healthcare systems to their knees, and social distancing left outside spaces looking eerily similar to a lot of locations in The Division. Additionally, as if to expand on the themes, this game explored the human element of a pandemic, with the spread of the dollar flu resulting in a breakdown of trust between the general public and authorities, and how misinformation about a new virus can spread almost as quickly as the disease itself. I remember a lot of misinformation during the pandemic, and especially a lack of faith in the ability of governments across the world to look after their citizens. The UK had this fucking dickhead partying with his rich friends while everyone else was keeping 2 meters apart from each other and fucking dying, so the idea that a sweeping virus would generate some questions of leadership? Yeah, it makes sense, don't it? Still, the disruption that a pandemic can cause to everyday life, as well as the vulnerability that modern society has to something like this, was handled pretty much spot on by The Division. Make sure to clean your banknotes just in case. So far, we've done a decent job of avoiding any real-world events. You know, I guess The Division is predicting any kind of global pandemic without getting into any kind of specifics, so it's safe in the knowledge that it doesn't have to be too accurate with any of the details. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon had much grander plans, however, and when the devs decided to create a game in 2001 about how Russia would invade Georgia in 2008, clearly they meant this not as just a video game, but as a wider prediction of real-world events that would definitely occur around this time? Yeah? Is that what we're doing? Like, Apollo is coming in here giving out the gift of prophecy to some random devs at Ubisoft, and they decide to make a semi-decent tactical shooter with that knowledge? Or is that Tom Clancy himself writing with his prophetic hand and dreaming up a scenario so realistic that it actually came true? There's nothing else you could have done with that kind of clairvoyance instead? I'm sure there's some lottery winnings that could have been yours. Ghost Recon's attempt at predicting the future was only based on 7 years in the future, so it's hardly like we're guessing how the world of tomorrow would look like. What's surprising though is how accurate the prediction was, and yes, I appreciate that it's hardly the craziest scenario, and it doesn't take a genius to think that real-life Russia of the early 2000s harbored a passionate desire to get the Soviet Union band back together. But it's still a global event that they pretty much nailed the date of. The good news is that the predictions effectively stop at an accurate date and a handful of accurate details, since Ghost Recon attempts to solve this conflict by having the US military take direct action and mobilize its troops to fight back against Russia. In reality, NATO said some things and told Russia off for being bad, but there weren't any major interventions until both sides signed a ceasefire agreement just a few weeks after the fighting started. Which is great, I suppose. Nothing escalated into some kind of messy global conflict, and Western influence was kept to the sidelines. It's nice to see that Tom Clancy may have over-predicted how aggressive the US would be. Now all I've got to do is somehow come to terms with the fact that Russia were probably inspired by Ghost Recon. Putin loves a good tactical shooter. Metal Gear is one big prediction of the future disguised as a video game. If you thought this video would get easier to digest, you're in for a shock, because behind all the cardboard boxes and naked cartwheels and 61 scissors hides one of the craziest ideas for a plot in Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. These games can be pretty hard to follow at times, since Hideo Kojima sometimes ties himself in knots with symbolism and metaphors and what should be taken at face value or not, but thankfully, MGS2 unfolds in such a way that it isn't all that hard to see what the game has to say. Like I said, these games love to predict the future, and the future that Sons of Liberty had for us to look forward to was, on the one hand, kind of exciting. This kind of technology and like bioengineering would be pretty cool to see in real life, but sadly we're several years down the road from when this game is set, and all we're left with is all the harrowing shit that did come true. Oh yeah, I love video games. So, a big part of this game are the Patriots, who are the shadowy organisation that are manipulating both the events of this game behind the scenes, and also the flow of information that makes its way to civilians eventually. This kind of recontextualizes a lot of what happens in MGS2 and frames it more as a war for the future than perhaps you might realise, and given where we are in current year, where fake news and misinformation are pretty commonplace, and how technology specifically is being used to spread it in such a way so as to influence how people think and feel about certain things, like, oh, the end of this game really does stand out a lot these days. There's actually a few cutscenes and codec calls that kind of feel a little too fourth wall breaky for my liking. I mean, I get the desire to have me feel incredibly uncomfortable as a way of hammering home the relatability of the content that this game is giving me, but fuck me! Campbell being an artificial intelligence that is attempting to control the human race in the shadows without anybody really genuinely realizing it? I mean, we're not far off, surely. AI is becoming more mainstream, the line between reality and virtual reality is becoming harder to distinguish, and this constant struggle for the genuine truth of any given situation makes the whole of MGS2 hit so much harder than it did in 2001. Only took them 23 years, but yep, we got there. The world's a shithole now, thanks Kojima. Evidently, there was something in the consciousness of game writers around the turn of the millennium, because Deus Ex 1, released in the year 2000, is perhaps the magnum opus for futurists who genuinely believe that video games have some kind of prophetic power. Apart from being a wonderful game from start to finish that still goes hard nearly 25 years later, Deus Ex was out here being all cool and cyberpunk not only before it was cool, but before people realized that video games were a good medium for this. So yeah, obviously the oldest game in this video houses the best predictions because it's attempting to guess the future from the furthest point out, but arguably the simplest prediction Deus Ex made was the most accurate and also the most coincidental. The New York skyline in this game has no World Trade Centers to save on memory, with their absence being attributed to a throwaway line that blames it on a terrorist attack, roughly 15 months before this would happen in real life. Oh, so Warren Spector and his team are secret wizards. And okay, maybe the 9/11 thing is just a weird bit of luck, you know? Lightning in a bottle stuff, nothing to be concerned about when dealing with pretend human beings who are actually secret wizards! But as it turns out, Deus Ex had a few things to say about modern society that were pretty fucking accurate. This game wasn't predicting world events, it was out here forecasting the entire landscape of global politics, economics, technology, security, and how everything intertwines together to create a society that is teetering on the edge of being a dystopian hellscape. Am I talking about Deus Ex or real life? I've actually lost track. The villains of this story, UNATCO, are an evil megacorporation with influence that reaches into governmental positions and are constantly keeping tabs on not just their customers, but pretty much the whole population. If the word Amazon or Google comes to mind, well, that's just how it is. How about a Facebook too? Fuck it. Throw in all these different factions who are all looking for some kind of truth in an age peppered with misinformation and fake news, and you slowly realize that Warren Spector and his secret wizards didn't really predict much in this game at all. It's hardly guesswork when you're actually using social trends and keeping an eye on where technology is heading and what industry veterans are saying, because it's all there. You can see the path that society is heading down. All you gotta do is make a video game about it. And damn, Deus Ex is still that game. Could use some of that foresight nowadays. And yeah, those are some games that accurately predicted the future. Do you agree, or is there something else you think I should have talked about instead? Let me know in a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more, and hit that bell for notifications for every new upload. Last time I talked about the creepiest unsolved mysteries, so make sure you go watch that. And I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including the Green Scorpion, Sarah Malian, and Scott Riker. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.